Welcome to everyone for joining us to our weekly crypto journey sessions. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are hosting this talk every Thursday during your lunch hour, so you can join us and chat about crypto and learn while having your lunch break. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself to the new faces here. I can see we have a lot of recurring attendees, but to the new ones, hi, I'm Merlinda, one of the team member here at Dasset, and I will be moderating our weekly crypto journey talk. Each week we'll be doing a presentation for our chosen topic for the week, followed by a hands-on demo so that you can get better navigated around the world of crypto. Before I introduce our speaker, I wanted to let you know if you missed any part of this crypto talk or would like to hear the session again, there will be a recorded version. Just contact us, our support team, which is support@dassetx.com, and they'll be able to give you the link. Also, we would love to hear from you. Feel free to post any question at any given time. Just pop in the chat just down below or the Q&A box, and we'll make sure to get to the Q&A at the end of the session. And also, for today's session, we'll be talking about, for today's session, we have our very own Dasset CEO, Stephen McCaskill. He will be, without giving too much away for this week's topic, we'll be going a little bit more about prediction market, what's available in the market and how to use them. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Stephen. Sorry, Stephen, you're on mute.
Thanks, Merlinda, and thank you everyone for being here today. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. I'm not really going to go into a demo this time around, but we'll be getting into Augur. Augur is a digital token that trades on Dasset, and Dasset is New Zealand's trading platform for digital assets. We have over 80 crypto assets trading on our platform, including the token that I'm going to talk to about today. So Augur isn't the only prediction market, and it's certainly not the only decentralized prediction market. And prediction markets have been an idea that have been around for a few decades and are used in a lot of modern businesses today, but they're also paid prediction markets, centralized prediction markets, and there aren't really that many out there, and we'll go into the reasons why. But here's a perfect example from Google's blog in 2005, talking about how they set up a predictive market within the company so that they can identify when things like new products are released or when a new office is built or opened. And so if you look at a lot of modern businesses, including Dasset, what we attempt to use prediction markets to identify when things are going to happen. And this enables businesses to make better decisions and enables individuals to make better decisions with how they spend their time, how they spend their money. And so, as you can see in this blog post, Google makes reference to Frederick Hayek. And if you don't know, Frederick Hayek is was an economist who won a Nobel Prize, I believe, in 1973. And is one of the greatest intellectuals of the last 100 years. And he's really the godfather of Bitcoin. And one of the reasons why is this essay he wrote in the 1940s called The Use of Knowledge in Society. And this essay explained the importance of decentralization for the very first time. And out of this materialized concepts such as crowdsourcing of knowledge, prediction markets, and decentralized systems. And so this is a quote from the essay, and I'll just read it out. Today, it is almost hearsay to suggest that scientific knowledge is not the sum of all knowledge, but a little reflection will show that there is beyond question a body of very important but unorganized knowledge, which cannot possibly be called scientific in the sense of knowledge of general rules, the knowledge of particular circumstances of time and place. Now, this is immensely powerful when we try and understand the importance of decentralization, is that every single person on planet Earth has a monopoly in their knowledge of time and place that nobody else has. And this enables those people with that information to make decisions based on that knowledge that nobody else has. And so this is where it becomes really important to have decentralization in for certain systems, because it enables the people with that knowledge of time and place that nobody else has, have the ability to make a decision. And if you think about it, back in the day with Henry Ford, we had assembly lines, and he would have 20 people on one assembly line. And when there was a problem in this manufacturing plant, the person on the assembly line would have to ask their manager, who would go to their manager, who would go to their manager, who would go to their manager, to make a decision on whether something needed to be changed on the assembly line. And so that manager would make a decision, and then it would get passed down to all the managers, to that person at the end of the line. Today, when you go to you go to a factory or a manufacturing plant, the people at the end are empowered to make the decisions right then and there. We've had major innovation in the corporate workplace, giving employees a lot more empowerment, because they've realized that the employees have that unique knowledge of time and place where they can see an error happening on, for example, assembly line right in front of them. They don't have to ask, 4 managers to get permission to make a change. They now have the power to make the changes to make sure that there's higher quality product coming off the assembly line. And so when we look at knowledge of time and place, we realize that everyone in the world has their own knowledge of time and place that nobody else has. And that's extremely powerful, because we don't really have any way of aggregating that knowledge except through something like a prediction market. And so prediction markets are not 100% accurate. They tend to be more accurate than if one person were to make a prediction. And what it's doing essentially is aggregating everyone's bits of knowledge of time and place. And so a really good example is if you take a jar of jelly beans and you ask one person, how many jelly beans are in this jar? You'll get huge range of answers all over the place, major outliers, and almost no one will really be able to tell you. But often than not, when you aggregate everyone's answers, then usually the average of those answers is how many jelly beans are in that jar. And I highly recommend doing the example, doing the test. Get a jar of jelly beans, ask 30 people, and aggregate all their responses, find the average, and it tends to be the closest to how many jelly beans are actually in that jar. And the reason why is it's aggregating everyone's little bit of knowledge of time and place. So everyone has an idea of how many jelly beans are in that jar. And when you aggregate everyone's knowledge, it tends to be accurate. And that's immensely powerful in helping us predict what's happening in the world and what we can see in the future. And so their prediction markets have been around for at least 4,000 years. And the earliest ones come to sports and political prediction markets. I think businesses, centralized businesses, are able to get away with them today by trying to make them less scary. So looking at sports betting, for example, it's still legal in New Zealand, it's legal in some countries, not legal everywhere. And so, focusing on sports makes it really a lot less serious than, say, talking about political outcomes. But if you look everywhere, there are prediction markets everywhere. And so if you look at financial markets, they come out in what they call futures products. And it's where people are attempting to predict the future price of a commodity or an asset or a financial product, essentially. And that's immensely powerful for people who have inventory or people who are producers, such as farmers. And the reason why is if you're producing a certain amount of livestock or a commodity, you want to guarantee your income. It might take 6 months for you to produce something. And so you don't know what it's going to be like in 6 months, whether the market's going to be oversaturated. You don't know what's going to happen with the currency market. You don't know what's going to happen with the weather. And so you don't know if there's going to be a famine or a drought. And so having a pretty good estimate of what the price of corn will be in 3 or 6 months will help those farmers, will help those businesses make better financial decisions today, make better decisions today on how to manage their inventory and their product. And so it creates a lot more stability for businesses, a lot more certainty. But the problem is creating a financial market today in a place like the United States costs $30 million. And most of those costs are compliance, regulatory costs, or capital requirements. And so if you're a farmer in, say, Indonesia or in Africa, you have one product, you're growing a patch of onions, something like that, and you want to secure your income for the patch of onions that you're growing, there's no way on earth that you have $30 million to start a market to essentially secure your income for once that harvest comes to fruition. And so it's very difficult for the average person to participate in a market, especially in a developing country where they don't really have access to financial tools that you and I might have here in New Zealand. And so they're immensely expensive and difficult to get off the ground. And so one reason why a decentralized prediction market has been so popular within the crypto space is that this is enabling people who don't have access to financial markets that they've had access to historically be able to secure their income. And so it's empowering people in places that don't have the same things that we have. And so how does a prediction market work? Well, it's really putting your money where your mouth is. You have this knowledge of time and place, and everyone has this little bit of knowledge of time and place. And by incentivizing people with monetary incentives, it encourages those people to put their money onto something that they think is more accurate than what they think is less accurate. And by doing so, you are incentivizing people to essentially find the truth. So one benefit of a prediction market is that it does help with things like misinformation, because what it attempts to do is create oracles, or essentially create what the truth of an outcome actually is, and by doing that through monetary incentive. Now, if you think about what money is or prices. Prices are signals, and prices are signals of how resources should be allocated. If something has an exorbitant price, then people will try to find ways to produce more, offer more, because they're incentivized by that higher price. And so when we look at a market, say we start with a market with $1, and somebody essentially puts down 50 cents saying the outcome will be yes, and somebody puts down 50 cents that the outcome will be no. Somebody can essentially come and buy those shares off the market. And what those dollars really represent is a probability of that outcome. And so at the end of the day, one person's going to be wrong, one person's going to be right. And so the person who's wrong is going to get $0. The person who's right is going to get $1. And so, over time, the probability will change of who is going to win. So if we think about a prediction like who's going to win the next New Zealand elections, is it going, there are multiple political parties. So if we say, historically, we look at the ones that have been the biggest contenders. We have, the Labour Party, and they recently won. And so at some point, it would get from, if we think that 50% is going to be national and 50% is going to be Labour Party, over time, it'll be, 70% Labour, 30% national. And then once the voting is over and all the votes counted, then we're going to see that it's going to be 1 for Labour Party, 0 for national. And so that means anyone who bought essentially a share in Labour Party winning will get paid out as a percentage of their holding of that share, essentially. So if you're holding 50% of the shares that Labour Party is going to win, then you're going to win 50% of the bets that have been placed. And so anyone who's put money on the National Party winning would get 0. They'd get nothing. And so the beautiful thing about decentralized prediction markets that are materializing is it enables people to enter or leave the market at any point in time. So you don't have to wait until the prediction is over. If you can essentially close your order when you're at 90%, and so if you put in $1 for a prediction when it was, at a 50%, then you're going to make quite a few gains if by that point in time, 90% of the market agrees that the outcome is in one direction. And so, and I'll go a little bit more into detail with that, but when we look at the market behind prediction markets, we'll see that the industry has had a lot of problems over the last 30, 40 years. And the problems is because the companies tend to be centralized. And so from a regulatory perspective, governments look at prediction markets like casinos or gambling. And so they've tended to look unfavorably towards them, and they've tended to shut them down frequently. And so the biggest one that was in the US was this one called Intrade. And Intrade had the biggest prediction market for the US presidential elections in 2012 for when Obama was winning. And mysteriously, the CEO, the company was asked to shut down, and then the CEO mysteriously died, and they were essentially forced shut by US regulators. And a lot, and we see that historically over the last few decades, a lot of these prediction markets have been shut down, usually by the US government. If you're not aware, gambling in the US in most places is illegal. Online gambling is legal. And so the US government has gone after a lot of these entities. But before they were shut down, the interesting thing is Intrade was working with the Department of Defense in the United States, looking at how to create predictions for things like terrorist attacks. So when is the next terrorist attack going to happen? And looking at these things are both good and bad. Because a lot of people say they are self-fulfilling prophecies. So once a prediction is made and there's money on the table, then there's an incentive to make sure that that happens. And that's when people start getting scared talking about prediction markets. And so, if the US government, the Department of Defense is looking at a prediction market to identify when the next terrorist attack is going to happen, and there's a high probability that's going to happen in this, at this certain point of time, then, people are worried that it manifests the actual terrorist attack, as opposed to taking everyone's little bits of knowledge of time and place to aggregate the best outcome and to identify what's actually going to happen in the world. And so, that's, I guess, a negative that you can look at a prediction market, and that has some scary consequences. We can use a prediction market to predict when is the next pandemic going to happen, those kinds of things. And when we start looking at that, people get very worried and about how these things can manifest. And so most prediction markets have been shut down, and they tend to get shut down because they're centralized, and because they are doing things that people may be uncomfortable with when we start looking at the actual implications. But if you think about them, they're really just tools, and they can be used for good and bad, very similar to the internet. And another example is, the CIA essentially used prediction markets to identify how to identify a mole or somebody who is a double agent within the ranks. So in the 1980s, there was a CIA agent who was essentially selling information to Russia, and nobody knew who it was. And what they essentially implemented was a prediction market where all the agents bet on who the spy was within the ranks, who was being that double agent. And nobody gave the answer of who it was. But when they ranked everyone's answers and they aggregated it, they found the person who was actually the double agent. And so again, it's not 100% accurate, but it tends to be more accurate than any single actor within the market. And so Augur, which is a decentralized prediction market on Dasset, but there are others out there. Now, the reason why I like talking about this one is because of how futuristic they were. So they came out way ahead of their time. And although they're doing, they're around and kind of a great example of an application that works on Ethereum, there's still not a lot of activity. And I think a big reason why is people are still learning what the power of prediction markets are, how they work, and how they benefit society. And so, these guys came way ahead of their time. And after Ethereum, the Augur project was the very first ICO on top of Ethereum. So I remember in 2015 buying or getting into the Augur ICO when there wasn't even wallets for Ethereum that were available. And so it was the first thing that you could essentially do with your ETH tokens. Once you got your ETH tokens, you could invest in this project, reputation token. And so REP is the token, reputation token, and there were 11 million that were minted back in 2015. They sold them all, and no more can be mined. And what you're essentially doing with these tokens is staking your reputation. And so the token is a reward mechanism for stating an outcome of a market. And you get financially rewarded when you state the truth of an outcome, and you are financially penalized when you give an inconsistent or incorrect response. And so because you're staking your reputation tokens, if you are giving false information about the outcome of an event, then you essentially lose your collateral, you lose your stake. And so that's where it comes down to, you are staking your reputation. So when we look at the Augur cycle, we realize that there's actually 3 different types of users. So if you think about something like Bitcoin, you have different market participants in Bitcoin. You have end users who are using Bitcoin to send and receive it. You have wallet operators, people who are running infrastructure nodes. You have miners, you have exchanges, you have merchants that accept Bitcoin. So there are many different market participants. And within Augur, it's the same thing. It's the Augur ecosystem with many different participants. So you can be a participant who creates a market. So to create a market, all you really need is some stable coins, a USDC. You don't have to actually engage by making a prediction on a market. So you can exist in the Augur ecosystem by just creating markets that other people use. And so by creating that market, you set the fee on the market. And so you can say, will, as a market, will Trump run again for re-election in 2024? And the answer is yes or no. And so you can create that market, along with a million other markets. So it doesn't necessarily mean people will use those markets, because on the other side, once you've created the market, you need market makers, you need people to actually come and trade that market. So, will the All Blacks win at the next, World Series? And it's to be determined. And so once you create that market, then you have your second users within the ecosystem, and those are people who are actually making the predictions. I think the All Blacks are going to win. I think they're going to win with a 20% or 20-point lead. Or I think they're going to win in a certain range. So there are many different ways that you can structure the market, and there are many different ways you can purchase or sell a share on a market. And so the last user within the ecosystem is the person holding the reputation token, and that is somebody who's reporting the outcome. So the person who is staking their reputation and stating the outcome really becomes an oracle. So if you think about, what's the weather in Auckland tomorrow? Is it going to be sunny or rainy? And the person who comes and stakes the reputation and states what the outcome is an oracle. So they are adding information to the blockchain, to these smart contracts about what the world around them is like. And so what they're essentially enabling is a system that has oracles about what the price of an asset is, what the outcome of an event is. And so that is data that can be used in other applications. So you can essentially use the outcome of a prediction market to utilize in other applications. So if you have, say, a betting application that's around sports, then depending on what the stated outcome is for the All Blacks winning, next year, then those results can then be used in other applications. And so it creates immensely useful tools or results that come out of this. And so, Chainlink, you've heard as the Oracle, and everyone knows it as an Oracle service, but Augur was really the first one, and it came out long before Chainlink. So, the first step is create a market. So this is actually an old interface. If you go to the website and you create a market, it's not necessarily going to look at like this, but a market can have many different outcomes. So the outcome doesn't have to be yes or no. Could be void, so essentially yes, no, or null, or void essentially, and that is neither happened. You can also have 4, 5 to 10 or more outcomes where an outcome is just a number. The All Blacks won on this date and the score was, and so that you could have a score range between 1 and 10, or you can have specific numbers. And so it's very robust in terms of how advanced you want to make the market, but you want to be very explicit, because the less detail there is, the more obscure the answer can be. And so a good example is looking at some of the centralized prediction markets where there was an outcome that was stated on a presidential election or an election, and the outcome was incorrect because one news source stated the outcome as this presidential candidate winning, another news source stated that this presidential candidate won. And so the prediction market wasn't explicit in terms of which news source and which date, and so there became a dispute to resolve who won based on the criteria of that market. So it's really important to be explicit. And then the beautiful thing about trading is that multiple people can enter the market and exit the market at any time. So it enables people to cut their losses, or it enables people to take their profits before the end or conclusion of the outcome. And so if you're watching a sports event, you're watching an All Blacks game, and you think they're going to win, halfway through it looks like they're going to lose, you're going to cut your losses and basically sell your shares, essentially. And so as time goes on, and this is where you can kind of see this here, as time goes on, there's more certainty in the market. And so the market will tend to move in one direction to another, and will usually end in a state of 1 and 0, where one answer has a value of 1, which means 100% that happened, and all the other outcomes had a value of 0. But what happens when there is a dispute? How does that work? And this is where it becomes really interesting, and I think Augur did a really good first stab at how decentralized prediction markets work. And what they essentially have done is they call their application a universe. So which I think is a brilliant way of doing it, because they're thinking about truth as something that's objective, it's universal, and it's specific to a universe. If you think about the truth of an outcome within a universe. And so what you essentially do once you create a market is you either designate somebody with reputation token as a reporter, or you don't designate a reporter. So if you designate a reporter, so you designate somebody with reputation tokens to state the outcome of your market, then it moves things a little bit faster. But if you don't, then anyone can come along and state what the outcome of that market is going to be. And so after the event is over, say, if there's an All Blacks game on Friday and it's Saturday now, what happens is the people with the reputation tokens, the reporters, will stake their reputation and say, yes, the All Blacks won, and this was the score, if there was a score that needed to be input. Now, if the people who are reporting are lying and say in the real world the All Blacks didn't win, so what that enables is a reporter to essentially stake their own reputation token and state what the truth of the matter is. And so if the majority of people, say 51%, are stating that there's a dispute in the outcome, then it goes through this dispute resolution process where you essentially have a certain number of days for people to stake on the outcome. Now, if you are staking an outcome and you're lying about it, you can essentially lose your stake. So if you initially lie about what your stake is, or what the outcome is, say the All Blacks did not win, which we hope never happens, but let's say they didn't, and you state they did. Well, you staked a certain amount of reputation tokens. So you might have staked something like $5,000 worth of reputation token. Now you said they didn't win. And that now enables somebody to come and dispute your claim. And not only will they get the fees from that market, they will also be able to claim your stake. So by lying about the outcome of a event, and staking your reputation, you can now lose that collateral that you've staked. And how it does that is somebody else has to come and they stake and they dispute what you're saying. And if you think about, we're aggregating value. So it really comes down to how much you're staking. So if $50,000 is staked saying that the All Blacks did not win, then it becomes a huge incentive for somebody to stake $50,000 to say the All Blacks did win if they did in fact win, because that person who stakes $50,000 can now receive whatever the fees are from the market plus your $50,000. And so if 2% of the entire network stakes their tokens, then all markets in the application or in the universe freeze. So what happens is a fork of the entire network happens. And so, if you think about this application, there might be hundreds of prediction markets on this network. And so there are hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands, maybe tens of thousands of predictions. And so one prediction market just freezes the entire network and stops all prediction markets from moving forward until a resolution is resolved. And so what happens is a fork of this market is made. And so the entire application is forked into each answer. So if the answer is yes or no, or say yes, no, or null, so then the entire application gets forked into 3. So the Augur networks forks into the yes universe, the no universe, and the null universe. And everyone holding this reputation token must then stake their tokens into one of the universes. And so if the All Blacks won, the best thing to do for somebody holding reputation token would be to stake their reputation token into the universe or the application or the fork that stated yes, that the All Blacks won. And a big reason why is it comes down to a financial incentive. So if you stake your tokens into the universe of the application that says no, the All Blacks didn't win, then the other thing I should mention is it's non-reversible. So once you send the tokens to that universe, you can't pull them back to a parent universe. So you can only send them to a child universe. And so if you are sending these reputation tokens to a fork that gives wrong answers, then your tokens in that fork, in that application, quickly become worthless. And so, if you have 1,000 tokens and you put 900 reputation tokens into the universe that says that there was a All Blacks that won, and that is what happened, then you get to keep those 900 tokens. Those 900 tokens will likely have the same value as what they had on the previous application. But the 100 tokens that you fork to the no universe will likely quickly become have no value. And the reason why is that people will tend to use the markets that are more accurate. They'll use the applications that are giving truthful answers, where the oracles are legitimate, where you can go and check, hey, the weather was this temperature on this day, and the sports team won this on this day, the commodity was priced this on this day. And so it gives certainty. And so the people who essentially try and deceive, the people who are putting their tokens into a universe that's giving misinformation, false information, will quickly lose the value of those tokens. And so people are financially incentivized to move their money into the an outcome that is truthful. And usually, if you don't, you end up losing the money, you end up losing the value, your investment that you have. And so it's really driven by these incentive structures. And so if you are fudging numbers or you're fudging the outcome of events, then you'll lose your stake, lose your collateral. If it gets to enough money on the line, enough money being staked through this dispute resolution process, then the entire application will fork into multiple applications, and people can then decide which applications they want to use. These applications are called universes and or child universes, and people will tend to use the ones that have the most accurate answers. And so a benefit of Augur is, this I think is immensely useful, is that it can't be censored. So now we're creating applications and possibilities that that haven't been enabled or allowed before. So people in Africa, they can predict future prices of their crops. They're historically, they haven't been able to access those markets. And now they can. They can create their own markets, and they can do it with a few cents. They don't need thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. It enables anyone to create their own market, and it's driven by financial incentives. So it gives people a better, accurate picture of what the outcomes will be. But of course, cons. The prediction markets are still young, and they're still in their infancy, still working out. There's many others that are out there, like Gnosis, stocks. I don't even know if it still exists, but these tried to come after Augur in 2017. They're still early days. There's scalability issues. This is why Augur recently moved to Polygon. It's more issues with the Ethereum network, and it relies on a huge amount of network participants, which Augur hasn't been able to get yet. And there needs to be enough participants to be able to accurately identify what that prediction is going to be. There also needs to be a large amount of liquidity, a large amount of capital, a large amount of market makers. And so that's only going to be time. And it's not necessarily going to be Augur. It could be a competitor to Augur. So let's open it up to questions.
Thank you, Stephen. And also thank you for sending your questions in chat. Feel free to still drop a comment or chat by a question by clicking on the Q&A or just opening the chat as well, and we'll be able to read it there. First question, do you think the prediction market is more utilized by people who are looking for an edge or more towards people looking to make better decisions?
I think it's, a mix. Yeah, so it really is a mix. For example, a prediction market that you may not aware exists is, what do you call it? Wiki. What is the Wikipedia? So after Jimmy Wales read The Use of Knowledge in Society, he went and invented Wikipedia. And if you think about it, Wikipedia is like orders of magnitude more accurate than encyclopedias. And the reason why is it takes everyone's little bits of knowledge and aggregates it to give a full historic account of what happened at that time and place. And so Wikipedia is a great example of how knowledge has been decentralized to give us a better representation of what's happened in history. And so we use prediction markets to piece back together what has happened in historic times. And so who uses Wikipedia? Everyone. So I think that it's really depends, on the reference. So if somebody wants to get, an edge on who's going to win, a sports game this weekend, then they may go check out prediction markets to see what's going on before they, go and watch the game or go hang out with their friends. So I think it's a variety of people who will use it. And then probably a lot of people who will be oblivious to them even existing.
Sure. How do you trade using rep or using Agar? I know you explained a little bit how the staking works, but you can also trade in exchanges.
Yep. So Augur is Augur rep. Yep, the reputation token is more like a governance token. So you don't have to have Augur to engage with the prediction market. So Augur, you need to earn income from the fees from a prediction market. You essentially, if you think about the 3 different users within the Augur ecosystem, if you want to go and create a market, if you want to trade on a prediction market, then you don't need Augur. You do need USDC, so you do need a stable coin. You used to just be able to do it with ETH, but I think they now enable it with stablecoin. So you need, and right now it's on the Polygon network, so you can go to augur.net and you can check out the markets. They don't really have many at the moment. They had maybe $5 to $10 million worth of markets and liquidity about a year ago, and it seems to be about the same today. So it still that's why I'm saying, this is a project that way before its time, it hasn't really taken off, but the ideas are there, the elements are there. The other beautiful thing about this project is it has so many different pieces of technology built into it. So it has multiple different ERC20s within the ecosystem. So when you create a market or you buy or you essentially bet on the outcome of an event, you are essentially generating an ERC20 token that represents your share of that market. And then in addition to that, there's a decentralized exchange. It was one of the first to come out. And so there's so many different technologies that are built within the Augur ecosystem. That's another piece that they were one of the first to put so many different technologies together. And so you can buy the reputation token REP on Dasset, you can buy it on decentralized exchanges, and you need to essentially utilize the token by staking and stating the outcomes, being an oracle to receive income through the Augur app.
Thank you for that. I think that was a good segue as well for another question on how does Dasset interact with Augur, which is you can purchase Augur in Dasset.
Yep. So yep. So you can buy it on Dasset, exactly.
Sweet. Also, is this currently being used in commodity markets?
So no, I think there were some initial markets around crypto. So what's the future price of Bitcoin? What's the future price of ETH? But it makes a lot of sense for it to, it makes a lot of sense for it to be used in the commodities industry. I mean, this I think is where its value is, helping, especially helping that farmer I'm from South Africa, so South Africa, they have a lot of farmers that have just a small patch of land, and there's no way that they can create their own financial market or spend thousands of dollars to participate in a financial market, but they can, they have a few dollars that they have here and there, and that can help them essentially create a bit more certainty around the products that they're producing. And so this is where I think has some good implications, some scary implications, because you can today go with 50 cents, go and create a commodities futures market using Augur by predicting the future price to say, I think the price of gold is going to be this price on this date, and you've instantly created a market. The implication is that you've done that without permission. You didn't have to go and spend $30 million on lawyer fees, regulatory fees, licensing to get that permission to do it. And so that's where the implications come in, is that it's creating accessibility and in such a way that it's really preventing the regulators from being able to be involved or stop what's happening. They can't really stop. Like trying to stop it is like trying to stop the internet, and so that's going to be a big challenge for regulators.
There was a new prediction market built on DOT. Is Polka market a direct competitor to Augur, you think?
It could be. I not very familiar with Polka market. I have seen it, but I haven't looked at the details. So I think there's lots of opportunity for competition here. It really comes down to timing. These guys were way ahead of their time. And so are they going to make it to when they become really relevant? That's the big question.
If Cardano is focusing on Africa, could you plug this into a smart contract?
Yep. So Augur is a collection of smart contracts. So it's very robust. That is what took the longest time for release, is auditing their smart contracts, because they were so uncertain about exploitation early on, because they didn't know if all the pieces worked together. And so the big question is Cardano going to have its smart contracts? I think that could be a good prediction market. Is they're meant to come out in October. And so that's probably a good use, a really good use. Will Cardano launch its smart contracts in October 2021? And so, that helps take everyone's bits of knowledge around the Cardano ecosystem, where development is at, to identify exactly when it could be released. And then once the smart contracts on Cardano are released, then the applications like this can be built on it.
Oh, watch that one. And one last question. This is Dasset related. There are some cryptocurrency that are not listed on Dasset, particularly the Solana. Is there a reason for it, or is it going to be on Dasset anytime soon?
Good question. So if you're unaware, Dasset utilizes or is a Bittrex exchange partner. And so we get most of our liquidity from Bittrex. And at the moment, Bittrex does not support Solana, but I have gotten word that they will be listing it pretty soon. Definitely come to us on social media or through our support if there's a token that's not listed that you're interested in, because of course we want to make sure that we have everything that our customers want. Solana is a pretty big one, so we are aware of that, and we are working on getting that listed on Dasset. It's still going to be probably 4 to 6 weeks. And at this point, it's not really up to us. It's up to Bittrex.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. Well, that's all we have for you today. Thank you for joining us for your lunch break to talk about Crypto Journey. We do appreciate everyone tuning in, especially the new faces that we've seen. Hope you learned a little bit more about crypto, especially Augur and the prediction markets that are there. If you're interested in any topic you'd like for us to cover in one of these lunch sessions, please let us know. Drop us a tweet or an email, or even any last words, Stephen?
Nope. Thanks so much for being here, and we'll talk soon.
See ya.
Take care, guys.